Hi, I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, host of Highly Sensitive Money. I'm a money coach, certified financial planner, and a highly sensitive person who brings money and social justice together. If you're someone who feels deeply, can endlessly think through how one decision affects everything else, or has ever struggled with all the things that traditional financial thinking leaves out, you're in the right place. In this show, I chat with highly sensitive people on how they handle their money, and with money experts on how they cultivate social justice in their work. Questions? Please go to allthecolors.net and schedule a free 30-minute call. And I'm happy to share resources on investment management, money coaching, workshops, or anything else money and social justice related. Join us in this episode as we explore money and sensitivity while honoring that all of our well-being is interconnected. My guest, Andie Whitaker, is both a therapist and runs Spiral Tending, where they support other therapists and healers through money cohorts, community building, and coaching. This is a conversation about honoring our needs, challenging the narratives we've internalized, and what it actually means to care for ourselves while caring for others. Welcome, Andie Whitaker, to Highly Sensitive Money. I'm excited to get to know you and to have this conversation.
Me too. Thanks for having me be here.
And I know we connected through mutual acquaintances. And when you saw this podcast, you're like, oh, I have a lot to say about that topic. Could you start with introducing yourself and your work?
Of course. Yeah. Andie, I'm a therapist in one part of my life, and I work with mostly trauma, if I had to just condense it. And then in my other part of my life, I recently started a business called Spiral Tending, where I support therapists and healers finding community with each other and skill sharing. And I do coaching for private practice therapists. And then I do an email listserv where monthly we hop on a call together and answer questions that people might have or how we can promote each other's work. Yeah.
And I know that money is also part of your work.
Yes. So under this with therapists, I also do money cohorts. Thank you. And those are specific to therapists because that's my lived experience. And we really go at that using art and creativity and trying to understand what comes up for us around money and maybe untangling from what we've learned from grad school and society and all this stuff while also realizing that we are healthcare workers and what that means and how to live in capitalism. Yeah.
And I know that I've had a couple of people come on the show and talk about how they're trained as social worker, as therapists, that if you care about money, then you're not in the right profession. Yes. Is that part of what you're working with?
Yes. I know from my experience, my grad program, I went to a very elitist social work program, and I'm very grateful for my education. And the messaging I got was stay in agency, don't go in private practice, keep your rates low, keep basically being in poverty. And for people that have family money, that's great. They don't need to charge full rate. But for the rest of us who have 100K in student debt or not family money, it gets a little more sticky for us, I think. Yeah.
That's so strange. It's a professional degree, right? It's an additional 2 years. The professional degree I have in my master's program, they never told me don't make any money or keep your rates low. Why? Where is that from?
Okay, great question. There's a lot about social work history that I'm just going to say I don't know. The things that I do know is that a lot of it is rooted in white Christianity, saviorism, going into different countries, missionary work. You're really giving your life to support other people. And then I'm recently learning that there's this whole other social work radical, badass people that really paved the way for us to show up as human, get our needs met, and help people as well. And I'm still learning about them. They exist, but yeah.
What do you mean show up as human?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think that with all professional healthcare, caretaking degrees, something that I hear a lot is what is requested of me isn't actually human. When I think about doctors, it's keep people alive all the time. And we're literally, our whole thing is birthing and dying. Or with therapists, it's you show up, you are well taken care of, you never self-disclose. Don't tell anyone if someone dies, God forbid you're grieving. It can feel a little sticky and keep to your own and be blank slate often. And I think that narrative is shifting, but yeah.
And that feels like such a part of capitalism as a whole. Like it's pretending that we're not human.
Yes, I'm like there's always these like Facebook group there like therapist Facebook groups. If you ever just want to play a drinking game, that's where you go. And what I feel like people say a lot in there is, do you think it's appropriate to go pee during session, to leave and go to the bathroom? Or my therapist ate during session. Is that okay? And I'm like, there's so many ways that, like, I'm like, we're not robots. Just because I'm here and present with you doesn't mean that my entire body shuts off. And how weird is that to request of someone? And then I think with money, it gets complicated because people are like, I'm paying you to be present. And I'm like, I'm just a human over here.
Yeah. The phrase, what is requested of me isn't actually human.
Yes.
I'm thinking about my therapist. Am I asking my therapist? I remember one time it was so cute. She sighed. And she told me, oh, I sighed because I saw a really nice butterfly. It wasn't about something you said.
Oh.
And it was such a good catch on her end of what meaning I'm giving my therapist. And she's a human.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
She's a human. And like when I was interviewing to like decide on which therapist to work on, there's something about shared lived experience, shared background that helped me choose her, which means that I want her to show up as she is.
Yeah.
Shout out to my therapist if she ever listens to this. Thank you.
I bet you she will. I definitely do. I'm like, hell yeah, you put your work into the world.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So you go through this a therapist program, the social work program.
Yeah.
That trains you to pretend you're not human, right? To pretend you don't have financial needs. When do you start to recognize that you have financial needs? Is it as they're saying the things, or is it afterwards? When does that happen?
It's way after. I always joke that my social work program was a cult, and I do feel like I was exiting like quite a big, I've had to metaphorically die a lot. And I think I really started to take money seriously when I was staring at my debt and I was like, had all these people on sliding scale who I freaking love. It's not like out of whatever. And I just was like, okay, I'm full. I could be making more. I'm afraid to ask people for more. But if I don't start making more, I'm filing bankruptcy. And I think that's more common with therapists than we talk about. So I think I had this kind of moment of, what path will I choose and what will I have to grow with, and how do I want to be with money, and how do I want to offer these services but not file bankruptcy before 35. Yeah.
And I also know that there are some therapists that charge 300, 400, 500 a session, right?
Yes.
So why was that also part of your sliding scale?
The 300, 400, 500. Oh man, no. When I first started, I was like 0 to 100. And to me, that felt like so much money at the time because I didn't understand how taxes worked. And I think maybe I filled this out a little bit, or we talked about it. Like, I grew up without a lot of money. And so for me to have $100, I was like, hell yeah. And then when I started to pay taxes, my healthcare bill, that's when I was like, oh, there's something about these therapists who are charging that amount of money, who might have some wisdom to how much it costs to have an office or electronic health record and all these like things I never had to think about. Does that make more sense?
Mm-hmm. So like the business ownership side, therapist.
Yes. I definitely, yeah, when I learned that I was running a business, I started to charge a lot more.
What was that like?
Okay.
Start to charge more? Yeah, just tell me more. Tell me more.
Okay. Great questions. At first, I felt like I was doing something really wrong. I felt like I kept telling my therapist, like, I'm leaving my people behind. Like, I just had this weight on me of I really wanted to work with poor people. I wanted to work with people that for whatever reason are afraid to use insurance or don't have insurance. And so I had this thing of like my life experience coming in. And then when the money started to flow in and I had some like stabilizing months, I just noticed how much more settled I felt. how my nervous system felt and how I was showing up different. And I was able to be on camera more and my chronic illness subsided. Like it was like such a big shift for me.
So having the financial stability felt like a big shift. And you
Yes.
didn't realize that until after the fact.
Oh, hell no. I was like, I don't know what you all are talking about. These therapist coaches online. I would always get so mad. And then I was like, you might have a point that, yeah, being able to go to the dentist and not be in pain helps me be a person in this work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if you were to, like, how many years into your private practice or how many months into your private practice
Wow.
did you realize that you needed to start charging more?
These are great questions. I went into private practice in 2021. By 2022, I started to raise my rate. I think I was like, I'm going to do 120. And I was still an associate. And where I was geographically located, I was working in a rural East Coast area. That was a lot of money. And then I just slowly, in 2023, I raised it to 150. And then 2024 happened. And that's when I was staring at my life and being like, what path will I take? And that is the year that I really shifted things.
And I know that before we hit recording, you said that you're also a sensitive person. So I wonder, did you ever feel like if I weren't so sensitive, maybe I could work 50 hours a week at $100 and it would work out? Did you have that like exploitative nature ever come out for you?
This is where no. This I'm not like I feel like I'm a very driven person, but if you ask me to work 40 hours a week, I'd be like, fuck you, fuck no. So I was also like I really have to pull myself to I, yeah, I think I'm the opposite experience of that, but I did feel shame about not doing that, if that makes sense. Because in our field, like when I got my first, I was a bachelor of social work and I was working milieu settings, and I did have a big caseload for that. But then my master's, when I got out of grad school, it was like the goal was like 100 people on my caseload. And they call it SPMI, severe persistent mental illness. And basically, what that means is like people are not stable. Usually, people are not housed. And it's very hard work. And it burned me out to not be able to offer people housing or whatever. But what really burned me out was like, I actually can't see 30 people a week. My heart can't arrive to them. And so I actually quit that job and I was like, I'm never working full time again. This took the life out of me. And when I went into private practice, I was like 12 to 15. And I would see all these people do 20 to 30, and that's their normal. And they can see five, six people in a day. But my heart space, I can't hold that. And I have had to work through a lot of shame of I am not like a lot of my peers. I do not have this well of energy for arriving, and nor do I really want to, but I felt pressure to, if that makes sense.
It definitely does. It definitely does. I know it took me a long time to realize that I needed more rest than I wanted to need.
Yes, so much more. Yeah.
Okay. So your ideal caseload is 12 to 15 people as a private practice. And then when did you start your other spiral tending work? What brought that along?
Oh, good. You're so good at these questions. I be a great therapist. I started it a year ago, and oh man, I was just actually making a video about this today about how what I really started to witness in my life around therapists and therapy, especially with AI and Alma and Headway and Grow and like really big tech and them investing with insurance companies, like all this like wild stuff. I was like, I think we're just fighting. There's a lot of fighting in the therapy field. And I had this moment of, I think we're just fighting so we don't have workers' rights. And then when we really break that down about who's impacted and how that shows up between us, like race, class, disability, gender, like it just becomes this like meta processing space between us. And I felt very sad about it because I was like, wow, if we could just be in the same room for honestly 24 hours, we could push policy. But because we're so fragmented, I feel like there's so much bitterness and resentment. And so what I started to do was I would do morning practices for therapists who were like really tired, where we did art and a lot of just like intuitive, what do I need? Where do I want to go? How is this work impacting me? But not a lot of processing. What I found is I think that therapists really want to be in community with each other, but really actually just want to be in a flow play space. And so we do a lot of art. Okay, so us therapists, we just like fight, fight, fight. And then within that is this big topic of money. And so when I was doing morning practice, I was doing some money stuff. And then I started to do some money cohorts and workshops. And that's when I really was realizing, like, oh my gosh, like we aren't talking about how much money it costs to be in this field. We aren't talking about how much debt we leave with. And we aren't talking about, I do think that there's what I'm going to say is like pretty complicated and layered, but I do think that there's like how trauma and poverty mix, the stories around money get sticky. And I feel like sometimes the way that shows up is around a lot of like self worth, self belief narratives that are not true. Like the people I work with, I'm like, you're a freaking badass. Please, you've been in the field like 20 years. You can charge at least $100. Yeah, that's what inspired me.
Okay, so seeing the fighting, I didn't know that therapists were fighting. I don't know who they were fighting. I had no idea to that side of the world.
It's very like private pay or insurance. And there's a lot of conversations about access and financial accessibility. And a lot of the groups are like private pay only clinicians over here, insurance over here, and telehealth therapists can't be in this group. And it gets resentful, I think. Yeah.
Maybe clicky too,
Yeah.
about who you can work with. I think the way that I can think about it in myself is I'm both an investment manager and like I serve people with $500,000 or more, and I'm a money coach where my minimum fee is $75 for a 50-minute session. So it's very broad. I'm not working with people who can't afford $75 for 50 minutes, but it's still pretty affordable.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And tell me if I'm wrong, but what I'm really hearing from you is like there's ways to do both. There's ways to be with both a lot of money and not a lot of money. And
And to see how the questions are often very similar
yes,
across the wealth spectrum. Okay, so we've talked about what your work is today. We talked about like how you arrived at it. And it sounds like you're very familiar with sensitivity. Can you share like when did you become aware of highly sensitive, like a highly sensitive person? How did you identify? Was it an easy process for you?
great question. I'm from a really big family, and I'm definitely like the feeler of the family system. And so I think it was very young for me. And I was actually telling my mom recently, I was like, yeah, my cousins and siblings, like when they were doing bad things, like they wouldn't tell me because they'd be like, you can't lie and you feel guilt. And I just would be like, I'd have to go tell my parents if I like smoked pot or something. And I just had this, I don't know, like I just was like, I don't ever want to lie. And so I'd always cry. And then when I got to college, they were like talking about like the highly sensitive child. And I was like, oh, that's me. Just very sensitive. Yeah.
And it felt like a relief to find out about that.
That's a great question. I think I fought it for a long time. I think that it wasn't until I discovered that highly sensitive people have wildly accurate, intuitive gifts, I think. And when I was stable enough to access that, my intuition, my needs, my feelings, that's when I really was like, yes, I love this. But it took me years to get there.
Wildly accurate, intuitive gifts. I remember for myself, it felt like I could see things that other people didn't want to see, and I often got blamed. So it's kill the messenger was part of my sensitivity.
Yes. Yes, because you're not operating in denial, but the people aren't ready to see it. You're like the change maker and also the problem. It's so annoying. Yeah.
The change maker and the problem. Yes, definitely. Right. Both the victim can become the change maker. Yeah.
Yes.
How do you see social justice as part of your work, or what were your experiences with it?
Wow. Great question. Oh, this is so layered. I moved to Portland when I was like, I don't know, 20, 21. And I don't know, I ended up living with a lot of just like queer people who really wanted to change the world for the better. And so there was a lot of education happening in this house I was living at. And that was the first time I was actually ever exposed to social justice language, education. I think we're all born with a gut response of what is not great. And that was the only thing that I had before that. I was the first one that went to college and all these things. And that house really changed the way I view the world. And then when I was in my bachelor program, I was going to a very conservative Christian institution for social work. And it just really catapulted me into thinking about the world differently. The language was a lot about like, how will this person need you? And whether or not that was like explicitly said, it was very missionary. You're here for a purpose. And that really changed how I view social justice as well. I felt like I was taught like in two different worlds. Like one part of my world was like talking a lot about race and acknowledging it and wanting to really be with it. And then I would go to this institution about social work and it was like, we don't talk about that here. We are not doing that. And then I think it just amplified. I think I started to understand more about what it might be to be someone looking for services with people who aren't willing to acknowledge social justice and how lonely and isolative that is. And I know I have experienced that a lot in my life. And then I really started to sink in to social justice in my master's program.
I'm not clear. So you had the experience of like systemic questioning at your home, the home that you lived in with your community. And then in your program, it was all like the individuals 100% responsible for their way of being. Is that what was happening?
It was like my bachelor's social work program was very,
Saviorism for them.
yes. And like I was the only out trans person in my like whole cohort and maybe ever on that campus. The campus actually closed because, from my understanding, us queer students like made such a riot. The Christians were like, we can't do this. So there was a lot of silencing and saviorism and double standards and double binds happening. They'd be like, we're kind people, we're doing this kind thing, and then we aren't talking about gay people or whatever it was. Yeah.
Okay, so a
Yeah.
lot of like blind spots and maybe hypocrisy.
Yes. And then when I was in my master's program, I went to Smith School for Social Work. They have a very large emphasis on power dynamic and racial power dynamics in the therapeutic room. And so the bulk of my education was really sitting in what that means and what it means to be white in that space. And within that, though, that was the most challenging environment I've ever been in racially. I think that there was so much hurt from that institution. I think there was something similar happening of we're teaching you these things, but we're not going to change these rules. Or we've gotten this feedback that this professor is like racist as fuck, but we're not changing it. And like how I felt like the response was like, we're going to call people in, but there was no understanding of what that meant. And so I think that also really changed me of what does social justice even mean to me and how do I want to be with it and how do we do it in a really messy, imperfect way? And to be honest, I don't have those answers, but I'm here for it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And with your work as a therapist, with your work with spiral tending, do you bring social justice into either of them? And if yes, how?
Great question. I really try to focus on workers' rights. We don't have any as therapists. So, like when we bill insurance, they can take our money back, thousands of dollars, and be like, "You have 30 days to pay us 100 grand." And to me, that feels like one of the most important things of like when I'm coaching someone, I'm like, "How can we give you multiple streams of income so if something happens, you're not totally fucked?" And I know this year Medicaid kicked a lot of therapists off, and that was like how therapists were surviving was getting paid off of this thing. And so basically in 30 days, so many people I knew suddenly didn't have money. And so I think a lot of the work I do is like, how can we try to organize, be in the same room? We don't all have to agree. And also, how can we build your business up enough that when this happens again, because it will, you're not a house or without food. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm hearing, okay, now it makes more sense why you were saying they all have to get into the same room. It's like people who take insurance, people who don't take insurance, people who do, bringing them together and seeing their shared their shared like status. But I think
Yes.
so many of us who are contract workers, because I have like multiple streams of income and I'm a contractor in some of them, and like the contracts I signed, right? Like I don't have all of these rights. They're part of
Yes.
this transition economy that we're in. And it's interesting to hear it from the point of view of therapists who are providing such important care.
Yes. And I feel because of this, there's a lot of people making content of here's how cool self-employment is. And within that, I'm like, how are we going to unionize if we're all self-employed, if we're all contracted? And I think it's intentional that they want us not to be able to. And so in some ways it's I love being self-employed, but I also have been sitting with and it comes with I think a lack of systemic responsibility, which is already occurring as we know. Yeah, I'm so with you.
Systemic responsibility is not really what we are seeing right now at all.
Yes.
Yeah, more like systemic denial.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the questions that like I probably should have had earlier in the conversation, but I'm just going to drop it in now is what was the financial background of your childhood and how does it affect the work that you do today? You talked about it a little bit. You talked about poverty and how trauma and poverty connect. So feel free to share whatever feels appropriate for this.
Yeah. Okay, complicated. My I have such a big family. I just have such a big family. My nanny and papa, so my mom's parents, at some point in their life made a lot of quick money. And I will never understand how they've lost it all. I don't know what happened. But for some period of time, I think they were like this hub of financial money for the family. And what was so confusing is like we would be living in an apartment without water sometimes turned on, or like taking our trash. I don't know, someone else's trash and always getting in trouble or whatever. And so I would have such stark experiences of, okay, I'm stealing lunch today from my friend, or don't have lunch money and I'm indebted to the school. That's so wild that they make children do that still. Actually, maybe they don't. I don't know. But so I'd have this experience, and then I would go to my nanny and papa's with a full fridge, and it was no thing. And they would take me school shopping when they saw how raggedy I looked, or and so I had these like very parallel experiences.
So that was conflicting experiences were a big part of your childhood.
Yes,
Yeah, tell me.
like knowing scarcity so deeply, and like rationing period supplies, like having this like really weird thing, and there's so much hiding in poverty, and then just being like, oh, I'm going to go over to the Nani and Papa's where I'm going to jump in the pool and feel calm for a second. And so I think I, when I started to really take my financial health seriously, I think I remembered that feeling of, oh, wow, yeah, money doesn't solve the grief, money doesn't solve it all. But I was remembering like how much a lack of money impacts your mental health, how much it impacts what you can and can't do, and like all these things.
So, in many ways, having that experience of abundance or enough was really productive as an adult. It allowed you to be like, actually, this is what I want to steer towards. I don't want to stay in the scarcity.
Yes, I don't want to. I love my mom, but she's going to work till the day she dies. Like, I do not want that. I don't got it in me. Some people do, and I'm like, I don't know. Just give me a little pill. I ain't doing that. But like, I just want enough. And I think that in America, there's something really sticky about that. But when I travel to different countries, it's like totally fine to want enough. Yeah.
Okay. And how does that affect the work that you do as a therapist with the clients you work with?
Wow. Shit. Well, it depends. Like when I'm working with someone wealthy, a lot of it is untangling from the shame and really supporting that person being like, what can you do in this lifetime with this money that changes what happened in the past here? Like, how can, you use that for a way that inspires you and makes you feel with more agency and you have the money. Like, how can we rewrite history a little bit with that? And that comes with a lot of untangling and I think a lot of self-worth work and guilt and smallness. I see a lot of smallness.
So clients with money, you see a lot of smallness in them.
Yes. Oh my
Can you
gosh.
expand that a little bit?
Yes.
I'm not sure what that means.
I just feel like they get so quiet and small and like afraid to tell people that they have money. And then there's this massive thing hiding in their relationships. And I'm like, it's part of our life. It's part of your life. It doesn't mean that's who you are. But I really see people get quite isolative and shameful often.
And that makes sense because if we're always hitting on the 1%, like what happens when you are the 1%, or you've got financial stability and your friends don't?
Yeah, that's heart work, I think. That is grief work. And that is also, I think we need more people who have a lot of money who aren't shitbags to change. Like, we do need money to fund healthcare. We do need money to make sure people can eat. Snap. And so I think that because the people in power and because of how this country got power and money, people are so afraid to be, at least the people I work with who are like wonderful, genuine souls, I think they're so afraid that they're going to be bad like that or violent or exploitive. And what I actually witness is actually like a lot of really beautiful queer people with money rewrite history and fund really incredible things that I think wouldn't have even gotten the eye of the 1%, if that makes sense.
So that's on one pool of your clients. What
Yeah.
about the clients without money or the
Oh man.
clients who are sometimes have it, sometimes don't?
That's a whole. I think my poorest clients, it takes years sometimes to be like, you can have some money. I don't know how you're going to get there. We could do it together. You might have to take out debt to do it. You probably will in this fucking country. But there's light, or do you want to start a business, or like, and I think even me asking those questions, I witness people like recoil and freeze often and get really scared. If I change this way, how do I know this way? No one has shown me the way. I'm the first one in my family to do this. And that I think is a lot more trauma work, a lot more gentleness, a lot more self-compassion and patience, honestly.
And that's making me think that, like, as much as it's difficult to be born with a 1%, to be poor is considered like a character flaw. Even though it isn't, it can still be societally considered such a character flaw.
Yes. And I think people internalize that and then really run with it of, I can't do that. Like only they get to do that. And first of all, fuck that. And second of all, like you're a badass. But I think there is trauma work around money to do. Yeah.
And you've already talked about the trauma work that you're doing or the money work that you're doing in spiral tending of helping people, the work that you've done yourself, right? Like, I'm a healer, I'm a helper, and I need a rest.
Yeah.
I need to have the financial resources to rest.
Yes. Yeah. And poor people don't really get to rest. So when you tell them, like, maybe one day you could rest, like, all their parts are like, fuck you, fuck no. I don't believe that shit. I'm not even going to let myself dream about that. It's too painful. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's like the comfort of what's known is often so huge, right? That the unknown just is, yeah, too scary. And yet it's also possible. So let's say you're listening, like we have listeners who are wealthy and we have listeners who are poor. What is the one tip that you would give to both of those different listeners?
Oh, great question. I think for wealthy people, own it. We need more people with money who want to change the world and make it better. And if you have it, it's okay. It is okay. And then for poor people, oh, that one's so hard. Believe in yourself. It's going to be a long road. Whatever you choose to do, you can do it. And your journey is going to look different than someone who has parents paying for their education and their food. It might be 10 years for you to get through college if that's what you want to do, but you can do it. Um, yeah.
So, Andie, thank you so much for being a guest on Highly Sensitive Money. As we start to wrap up the podcast, what is the best way for people to reach out to you? How can they work with you, support your work?
You can look me up on Instagram by just writing in spiral tending, all one word, or my website is spiraltending.com. If you are looking for a therapist who knows what it's like to be a little broke often, You can look me up at Andie Graves, and I'm licensed in Oregon, Vermont, and New Hampshire.
Perfect. And we'll have all of that in the show notes. And then just one more question came up for me. Why spiral tending? Tell us about that beautiful name. It's so gorgeous. I can imagine what it might be, but I'd love to hear the backstory.
In 2018, I went to Ireland with my wife, who was my best friend at the time, and I really fell in love with the spiral and the concept of spiraling through trauma work and spiraling through learning and really just allowing the human to be a body and do its thing and release and then feel better and then worse again. And then when we were sitting down on the couch, I was like, what should this name be? And my wife was like, spiral tending. Obviously, you love spirals and all you do is tend to the heart, blah, 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 and so, yeah.
Love that. I
Yeah.
love that joint name. And yes, spirals, the expansion and the contraction and all of it. Well, once again, Andie, thank you so much for being a guest. Thanks for reaching out and being like, hey, your podcast, my work, let's bring it together. And I look forward to staying in touch. Andie is fierce in naming what so many of us feel, but don't always say out loud. That we're not robots, that our needs don't disappear just because we're being paid to show up, and that sometimes the most radical thing we can do is honor our own capacity. Andie invites us to see the beauty and strength in sensitivity, and the fact that it often means we need to structure our lives differently. Andie's work creating spaces for therapists to explore money through art and creativity, and to build community instead of competition, is a generous invitation to all healers. I hope this conversation gave you permission to listen to your own needs and question some of the narratives you've been carrying about what you should be able to handle. Thank you for joining me on Highly Sensitive Money. I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, and I hope this episode helped you see how money and sensitivity can work together while honoring our interconnected well-being. We have the power to create a system where everyone's needs are met because nature is abundant. If you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to leave a review and share this episode with someone who could benefit. Your support helps this message reach more people navigating their own financial journeys. A thank you goes to Mike Schul for the music and Juan Antonio Nunez for producing. For more resources on bringing money and social justice together, sign up for my monthly newsletter over at allthecolors.net. I also invite you to schedule a free 30-minute call where we can talk about money coaching, investment management, and all things money and social justice. Until next time, remember that your sensitivity and deep thinking is your superpower.